Gratiela, I understand that you originally studied journalism back in
I did.
Bucharest, and then you decided to go into a more respectable line of work. What attracted you to acting?
It was really an accident. I was volunteering with a theater rehabilitative program in California state prisons, and I really wanted to become a teaching artist with them. In order to become a teaching artist, one had to get the training with the company. It's the specific training. It's Commedia dell'arte, the 1600s Italian art form in the 1600s. And so I had to get that training for a couple years to be able to teach.
Hmm.
And then I finally was able to become a teaching artist with the program. Eventually, the pandemic hit, and I, the all the theaters shut down, and so eventually I had to find a way to create and sort of nurture my soul, and I started auditioning. So and then 1883 happened pretty soon after that.
Well, that's certainly a serendipitous move for you. What do you think Taylor Sheridan saw in you that made him think, okay, that is the actor I want for this part?
I really don't know. I feel like everything I did in that tape was just wrong. Like literally the I shot that tape when I was in Romania. I was visiting my friends and family for the first time in 3 years. And I really wasn't prepped because I didn't want to audition while on the road. So I had to go buy a tripod that day with like a ring light, and I didn't have a background, and there were shadows all over the place and no lighting, and I sang in the audition and I don't sing. And I was like, this is my worst tape ever. And I sent it in. And then I don't know, about 5 days later when I flew back home, my manager called me. It was a Sunday. I landed Saturday night and she called me Sunday and she said, you you booked you booked this. And it, yeah, I have yet to sort of it hasn't landed with me yet.
Well, I can imagine the accent had something to do with it. But I know enough about Taylor Sheridan to know that would be all there would be to do with it.
Yeah.
Did he ever tell you what he saw in the tape?
No, no. You know what I love about Taylor is that he doesn't do much talking about, characters, and I think he trusts his actors, and he trusts them to create their story and to create the process together. And he's a really wonderful director to work with. But no, we never really talked about my tape.
Well, now, when you were reading the script, it must have impressed you that this is a very strong woman. I mean, you should have to be strong to survive in that environment. And whereas, she might have loved her husband, there are practical considerations about making this great journey westward. And, after she sized up Shay and he wasn't interested, she went on to, size up Thomas. Uh, what were your feelings about the characters you were reading the script?
You know, it's I'd have to address her background. She was coming from, at the time, slavery had just been abolished in the Romanian territories. Roma people were enslaved for 400 or 500 years, all over Europe, but predominantly in the Romanian territories. And they've been, subject to ethnic cleansing, and there were, as at the time they called them gypsy hunts, which was a sport. And so she made this trip, her and her husband, just I think she was seeking safety, and it's less than freedom. It's just being able to just exist. And She loses her husband in episode 2, and it's a different, I think she's lived through hell back home, but this is a different kind of hell. And I don't think she's been on her own, and definitely not in an environment like this, because Roma communities are they're so close together, and it's like there's a support system within the community. And she is on her own now, and she has two children, two young children. So I think her, and the scene that we saw with Shay, comes from a place where she is so broken by the idea that something might happen to her children, that she is willing to shed any sort of whatever is considered moral in her culture. You know, widows, Roma widows stay widows for the rest of their lives. Um, and so she goes against that, and I think it's for her kids. Whereas with Thomas, I think that's just what I really love about the story, is that it's such a slow burn story, love story, that and it's the kind of love that I don't think she's ever known before. I think because he doesn't ask for anything. He just sort of helps her build herself up, and gives her all these skills. And I think she's in a position where she doesn't need him, which is such a selfless love, and it's so beautiful. And they're, yeah, two different.
Well, now he indicates this very early on that they actually do have a lot in common, in the sense that they both he literally coming from a slavery background, and your character coming from a more or less a slavery background back home.
Yeah.
I know Taylor swears everybody to secrecy, but are we going to hear more about this? They talk about this together in the future.
Um, I don't. Well, you're gonna have to watch to know
Okay, all
that,
right.
but
It's
but but I do think that's really beautiful. Also, um, part of the story that they don't talk about it, but they see it in each other. They don't need to talk about it. It's that kind of loss that you sense in someone when you're in the same room without really. It doesn't need to be spoken. And I think it's just the fact that they're both. What she sees in him is what she recognizes in him, is that he's also an an, an outsider who's never felt welcome in his home, his land. And so and she comes from that experience, and I think she senses that in him, and he probably senses that in her too. And I don't think they need to address it.
Did you have to go to cowboy camp before the series
Yeah,
started?
yeah, I did. You bet.
What
You
was
bet.
your favorite part of the camp, and what was your least favorite part of the camp?
There was no such thing as least favorite. I loved it so much. I could have done it 24 hours a day. It's like at the end of the day, when we have to wrap up and go home, I was upset because I wanted to jump on another horse and keep riding. I I loved all of it, but I think I discovered a new kind of freedom riding horses that I didn't know before. Just being able to run loose on a pasture. And I think that's something I don't ever want to let go. I want to keep riding horses, and yeah,
You've
I
been
think that's
very
freedom.
generous with your time. One last question. Uh, what do you find in interacting with people in this country is the biggest misconception people here have about Romania? I mean, do you get asked about Dracula a lot, or things like that? Right?
Yes, I think people know about Ceausescu,
Well,
and
yes. Who
and
is as close to Dracula as we're probably ever going to see in real life.
and Nadia Comaneci.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know that people know a lot about the culture, but there's such a big community of immigrants here, who, although are not from Romania or from, the Eastern Bloc, so, we kind of share in the same history. Um, hmm, I don't know. It's an interesting one thing I do feel
Hello?
issues of racism at home against Roma people, which is just inherited from hundreds and hundreds of years.
Gratiela, I missed the last minute of that. You froze on me. You said back home, the issue of racism.
Yeah, we still struggle to come to terms with that. Like I was saying, I never was in school. I was never taught all these don't really address. And I think what's interesting is a lot of Romanians feel offended when people confuse them with Roma people. And to me, it's such an interesting thing because it's like it's just this. It's really racism that we've inherited, which is this idea that Roma people are inferior. So, but all throughout Europe and even here, a lot of people confuse Romanians with Roma, and it's just an interesting dynamic of what it does to both communities and how they feel about it.
Well, I've enjoyed speaking with you, and I wish you happy trails as the series progresses. I know you can't say how long the ride will be, but I hope you wind up having a ride to a happy sunset. Put it that way.
I hope so too. Thank you for your time, and it's so lovely to meet you.
Same here. Thank you.